From the prophet Habakkuk in the first chapter comes his words from the Lord. The oracle that the prophet Habakkuk saw. O Lord, how long shall I cry for help, and you will not listen, or cry to you violence, and you will not save? Why do you make me see wrongdoing and look at trouble? Destruction and violence are before me. Strife and contention arise. So the law becomes slack, and justice never prevails. The wicked surround the righteous. Therefore judgment comes forth perverted. I will stand at my watchpost and station myself on the rampart. I will keep watch to see what he will say to me and what he will answer concerning my complaint. Then the Lord answered me and said, write the vision, make it plain on tablets, so that a runner may read it. For there is still a vision for the appointed time. It speaks of the end and does not lie. If it seems to tarry, wait for it. It will surely come, and it will not delay. Look at the proud. Their spirit is not right in them, but the righteous live by their faith. And here comes a familiar story from the Gospel of Luke. I want you to pay attention, because I'm going to ask you in a minute who Zacheaus was, what we know about him from this story, and what he did. Chapter 19 of Luke. He entered Jericho and was passing through it. And a man was there named Zacheaus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd, he could not, because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him, because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, Zacheaus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today. So Zacheaus hurried down and was happy to welcome Jesus. All who saw it began to grumble and say, Jesus is gone to be a guest of one who is a sinner. Zacheaus stood there and said to the Lord, look, half of my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much. And Jesus said to him, today's salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and save the lost. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Okay, so you all know it. Debbie and I didn't plan anything, but we could have. You learned it in Sunday school, right? Zacheaus was a wee little man was he. He climbed into a sycamore tree, for the Lord he wanted to see. And the Lord said, Zacheaus, come down from there right now, for I'm going to your house today. I'm going to your house today. Right? Anybody remember that? Yeah, I've seen some nods. All right, good. So who was Zacheaus? What does the text tell us about him? He was short. He was not just a tax collector. He was the chief tax collector. He had staff, baby. What else? He was rich. He was a sinner, or he was at least perceived to be a sinner, yes. He was nimble. Okay, you're reading into it a little bit. He climbed a tree, but okay. Sycamore trees, by the way, are trees that have very low branches so that little people can climb up them easily. That's a true thing. What else? Now see, you all have only gotten into the first 3 verses here. There's more about Zacheaus. What else do we learn about him? What's that? He wanted to see Jesus. And in fact, he did see Jesus. And then what happened? What's that? He declared his innocence. No, that's not what happened, but that was funny. Thank you. He welcomed Jesus to his home, and yes, he was transformed. He said he'd give the most important thing in his life to the poor and to those he had cheated. Don't miss that part. What else? Anything else? Now we got a good list going. Right? Okay, so Zacheaus was a wee little man. Wee little man was he. Keith, I'm moving. He was the chief tax collector. Not just the tax collector, but the chief tax collector. He had people. And the chief tax collector could do things like this. He'd be walking down the street, right? And he'd come across a nice guy and he'd say, "How are you, Mr. Owens? You doing well today?"
Yes, ma'am.
"That's great. Have you paid your taxes lately?"
Every year.
"Every year. Well, what about today?"
Not today.
"Well, what do you have on you today?"
About $100.
"You have $100 in your pocket?" "Yeah, what do you have in these pockets here?"
Nothing.
"Anything? Nothing that's tax. You got a credit card? Okay, we maybe could tax that credit card. Let's think about that. What else you got? You got
I have a car in the lot. You can tax it.
You got car. Oh, he's got car keys. He's got car keys. What else? You got a wallet with you today?
No.
Anything in there?
Don't carry a wallet.
Okay. All right. Well, the car keys, you could give me about $20 for the tax on that car, couldn't you?
Absolutely.
Absolutely? Yeah, good. Great, good. I got a Werther's original. That's the way tax collecting worked in Jesus' day. Zacheaus could just walk up to anybody and say, "Well, looks like to me you owe some taxes. You got a new shirt on, you got car keys in your pocket, you got a credit card. Pay up." And if the tax on that car out there was supposed to be $2, I could ask you for $20 and you'd be expected to pay it. And they did that. That's why tax collectors were perceived as sinners, because they were perceived as Roman government, the oppressing, overseeing government's puppets, who stole from people more than what they were supposed to be given. Okay? So in very real ways, people understood Zacheaus to be a thief. And when people say, "Look, he's with a sinner," it's because he's with a thief. That's such an important one that God, put it on the top 10 list of things not to do. Right? But Zacheaus hears Jesus is coming to town. Now we can presume that Zacheaus maybe has met Jesus before, or at least heard of Jesus' reputation, because he's so excited about Jesus coming that he tries to get through the crowd to see Jesus, and he can't do it. I went to Bill Clinton's inauguration one time, and I was there with a 95-year-old lifelong Democrat, and all this old dude wanted to do was see him. He didn't want to talk to him. He didn't want to shake his hand. He didn't want to get his autograph. He just wanted to see him. And so I took him about 3/4 of a mile out of the parade route to a route where I knew they were going to go. And the limo went right past, and he saw him, and he waved. Bill Clinton waved. And that old guy died happy. All we wanted to do was see him. And it's kind of what we get the impression of Zacheaus, just wants to see Jesus, to figure out what this is all about. And he is such a sinner and such a weasel that he can't break through. The people won't let him in. So he runs up ahead of the parade route and climbs a tree with low branches and hangs out in the tree for a while to see Jesus. And Jesus comes along and he takes a look and he goes, "There's a dude in a tree over there. What's he doing?" And Jesus goes up to him and says, "Come down from that tree. Come to me. I'm calling to you. You are mine." And Zacheaus comes down out of the tree and Jesus says, "I want to go to your house." Now, why does Jesus want to go to the house of a sinner? Because of the miracle he can do there. Zacheaus has a bad past. He's known as a thief. People don't like him. He's stolen money from the people who live around him. He's taken exorbitant rates. Hundreds of dollars in percentage of overtax. I mean, heck, we don't like to pay the taxes we got now. Imagine if somebody charged you 10 or 20 or 100 times more than that. That's what he was doing. And Jesus says, "I'm going to your house. I don't care about your past." Now think about that for a minute. I don't care about your past. Any people in here carrying around past that's heavy and guilt-laden? Something you did that you weren't supposed to do, something you should have done that you didn't manage to do, words that you spoke that you shouldn't, things said in anger. Any all good people ever cheat on your taxes? Surely not. But Jesus goes to Zacheaus' house and the salvation comes to the whole household, not just Zacheaus. His whole household is transformed. And watch how it's transformed. The most important thing in Zacheaus' life is money. And he says, and I didn't get this. I've read this story hundreds of times. I sang the song as a little kid. I got all that. Didn't get this until this time reading it. Zacheaus has a fortune. And off the top, he says, "I'm going to give half of it away." Scripture only requires 10%. He's giving half of it away. And then from that half that he has left, he's going to return fourfold anything he's taken. And that fourfold comes from the book of Exodus, because if you stole a sheep, you were expected to return 4 sheep to the person that you stole it from. See, here's the thing. Vance Church has been in money trouble for about 40 years or so, maybe 50. We're spending more money than we're taking in. And we're spending at a higher percentage than the percentages we're getting back from what we've invested. And some of you are mad because I want to talk about that. And then there's a whole another group of you that are mad because nobody's been talking about that for 50 years. So y'all can just be mad. Because something has to happen here. And I think what has to happen is we need to realize why we should give. Here's what happens. Zacheaus' past is totally transformed in his present, and he is so excited that he changes his entire future by giving up all but an eighth, if you do that math, of what he has. When has God touched us in such a way that we can say, we leave that past at the cross. We live a different present, and we look forward to an exciting future. Hand in hand with Jesus. Now, if that don't get hold of you and cause you to rethink how you're living, I'm not sure what will. We were up here, last night up here were some very well-known musicians. They're all Bill Gaither people. Ain't nothing wrong with it. Not my thing, but ain't nothing wrong with it. And Angela Prim was here. She's a black gospel singer, and she was talking about, she went and did 19 songs, 19 gigs in Japan. And what she didn't tell us last night is that because in Japan they don't see black people, they thought she was Whitney Houston. And so she would show up for one of these gigs and they'd be like, Whitney, 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 Whitney. She started singing I Will Always Love You as part of her tour. And she's bigger than life presence. I mean, come on, she was doing this kind of stuff up here and singing and filling this room. And she said she went to Japan and they said to her, now, Sister Angie, we're a Buddhist country, so you need to sing quiet if you really want to transform people and teach them about Jesus. And if you don't have to be with this woman but about a half a minute to know there ain't nothing quiet about her. And she said, I went and I did this for 18 of the 19 of those gigs. I was quiet. And she said, after the 18th one, I went out in the car and I said, I got to get out of here. I'm about to explode. She said, I felt like I was having a heart attack because I'd been quiet for 18 concerts. And she said the 19th concert she went in, and all these people falling out all over the place. They're praising Jesus. They're waving their hands around. They're running around. They're slain in the spirit. They're acting crazy. She said, those are crazy Christians. Y'all probably seen some of those. And she said to the person sitting next to her, what is this? She said, I don't have to be quiet here, right? What's going on? Can you explain this to me? Because this is unlike anything else I've seen here in Japan. And the woman said to her, this is the last day of the conference that all these people have been at. And all these people are from underground churches around the world, and they know that this is the last time they will be able to worship publicly, loudly, and together. And after this, they're likely to go home and be martyred for their faith. And she said the room was full of excitement. These people were so thrilled to be in the presence of God, even though they knew they were likely to go home and die at the hands of whatever government from wherever they had come from. Think for a minute about all that God has given us. The freedom to worship, a Bible in our hand, a community of faith that supports us, and transformed lives. what does that transformation do and look like in the way that we shall live for God in the future? Think about it. Amen.